In Buenos Aires, 1971, the streets are calm. A young man named Carlos walks alone, his pace unhurried. He is 17 years old, with blonde curls and a boyish face. As he moves down the sidewalk, he notices a large mansion ahead. He slows his steps and studies the property. The front gate is open. He glances left, then right. No one is nearby. Without a second thought, he walks through the gate and approaches the front door. Carlos steps inside. The interior is quiet. He closes the door behind him and begins moving through the house, touching objects as he passes. In the living room, he notices a table with a glass decanter. He pours himself a drink, takes a sip, and sets the glass down. In a nearby bedroom, he opens drawers one by one. Inside are necklaces, bracelets, and rings. He slips several pieces into his pockets. Moving to another room, he checks the closets and dresser tops. Each item he likes is quickly taken. After collecting enough, Carlos heads toward the garage. Parked inside is a motorcycle. He sits on it, grips the handlebars, and starts the engine. Without looking back, he rides the bike out of the garage, through the gate, and into the street. Later that day, he returns home. Inside the modest family house, his mother notices the motorcycle and asks where it came from. Carlos smiles and says a classmate lent it to him, adding that no one can refuse him when he asks for something. That evening, his father arrives home from work. Carlos is nearby, polishing the bike. His father tells him never take anything that isn't his, warning that he should only use what belongs to him. Carlos listens silently, offering no argument. Not long after, Carlos meets his girlfriend, Marisol. He pulls a gold pendant from his pocket and hands it to her, claiming it once belonged to his mother when she was a child. Marisol accepts the gift without question. At his new school, Carlos is rarely present. When he does attend, he behaves carelessly, smoking during class and using drugs. One day, while seated behind another boy, Carlos flicks a lighter near the back of his head. The flame catches the boy's hair. The boy, named Ramon, jumps up and punches Carlos. The fight is broken up, and both are sent to the principal's office. While they wait outside, Ramon warns Carlos not to get his pants dirty. He says if Carlos does, he will make him lick them clean. Carlos does not react with anger. Instead, he studies Ramon's face as if interested in him for another reason. Later, Carlos approaches Ramon again, this time offering him a vinyl record. He says nothing about where it came from. Ramon accepts it, unaware that it is stolen. Ramon studies the record for a moment, then looks back at Carlos. He asks where he got it. Carlos avoids the question, letting the silence serve as his answer. After a short pause, Ramon admits he also steals. He says he knows people who can make good use of someone like Carlos. The next afternoon, Ramon invites Carlos to his house. Inside, the air smells faintly of tobacco and food. At the table, Ramon's father, Jose, sits eating boiled potatoes. In one hand, he holds a half-clean pistol. Jose glances up at Carlos and, without speaking, slides the pistol toward him. Carlos picks it up, feels its weight, and aims at an empty corner of the room before pulling the trigger. The shot echoes through the house. Carlos smiles and admits he has been stealing for as long as he can remember. He says he rarely keeps what he takes, often giving it away to people so they will like him. He asks if he can keep shooting, but Jose shakes his head, telling him bullets cost money. Carlos leans back in his chair, thinks for a moment. Then he suggests they rob a gun shop. The idea gets Jose's attention. He looks to Ramon, who gives a small nod. The plan is made. Later that night, the street outside the gun shop is empty. Carlos climbs onto the roof and finds an opening. Inside, he moves carefully down each aisle, selecting rifles and pistols from shelves. Outside, Ramon waits with the car. Carlos passes the weapons down to him, one after another. Ramon loads them into the back seat. When the shelves are nearly bare, Carlos climbs back inside to collect the remaining ammunition. He fills a bag with boxes of bullets, then slips back out the way he came. They return to the house with the stolen goods. Ana Maria, a woman who appears to have some authority in the household, looks pleased. She examines one of the rifles and smiles. Jose, however, is not happy. He tells Carlos he was only supposed to look at the store, not take everything. He calls Carlos unpredictable. Ramon steps in, assuring his father that Carlos will listen to him from now on. Jose studies Carlos for a moment, then agrees. He says they now have a strong gang. The following morning, Ramon hands Carlos a folded document, a fake passport. Alongside it, he gives him a thick roll of cash, his share of the weapons sale. Ramon says he has information about another job. It is a mansion filled with valuable paintings. The owner is an elderly man who lives alone and never leaves the property. That night, Carlos and Ramon approach the mansion. The street is dark and quiet. They stop at the edge of the property, watching the windows for movement. Carlos moves first, slipping through a side entrance. Inside, the rooms are dimly lit. The air is still. As they search for the paintings, Carlos turns a corner and comes face to face with the old man. The man's eyes widen, but he does not speak. Without thinking, Carlos raises his gun and fires. The shot hits the man, who staggers but remains on his feet. He turns away and walks slowly toward the stairs, holding his side. Carlos follows at a distance. The man reaches the top landing and stops in front of a large painting. He stares at it for several seconds without saying a word. Then he steps into the bathroom. He turns on the water, sits on the closed toilet lid, and leans back. Moments later, his body goes still. Carlos walks into the room and looks at the painting the man had been staring. He removes it from a wall and tucks it under his arm. Later, back in his own room, Carlos hangs the stolen painting above his bed. He lies down with a revolver in his arms, staring at the image until he falls asleep. The next day, his mother notices the revolver and asks about it. Carlos says it is a toy. To prove it, he points it directly at her and pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. He repeats that it is harmless. Days later, the gang visits another mansion, this time with their girlfriends. Marisol's twin sister is now dating Ramon. Inside, they set up bottles and cans for target practice. Gunshots echo through the hall. A maid appears in the doorway, startled by the noise. She sees the young men holding guns and freezes. Instead of yelling or calling the police, she offers to bring them beer. They accept, and she leaves the room. Back at Jose's house, he hears what happened in the previous job. He learns the boys killed the old man and hung his paintings on the walls. Late that night, Jose walks through the house, taking down every one of the stolen paintings. Meanwhile, Ramon's mother approaches Carlos when they are alone. She tells him his girlfriend is probably inexperienced and hints that she could teach him more. Carlos declines, saying he likes her husband and does not want trouble. Some nights later, Carlos sets his sights on a jewelry store. He chooses a wall at the back and smashes through it, creating a rough opening just large enough to crawl through. Once inside, the shop is silent. He walks to the display cases, scanning the glittering rows of rings, necklaces, and earrings. He removes a pair of earrings, holds them up to his ears in a mirror, and smiles to himself. As he moves deeper into the shop, he notices a heavy safe in the office. The sight makes him pause. He runs his hand over the metal door and tells Ramon they should open it. Ramon shakes his head. He says they didn't come here for that. Carlos, annoyed by the refusal, raises his pistol and fires a single round into the ceiling. The sound echoes through the small space. They leave without opening the safe. In the days that follow, the two move into a small hotel room. One evening, Carlos steps outside and sees a homeless man sitting against the wall. The man's clothes are torn, and he smells strongly of alcohol. Carlos pulls a brooch from his pocket, another stolen piece, and hands it to the man without explanation. Later, Ramon sees the brooch in the man's possession. He confronts Carlos, telling him not to show off stolen goods. He warns that it draws unnecessary attention. One night, they visit a nightclub. The air is heavy with smoke, and the music is loud. Ramon points across the room to a well-dressed man seated alone. His name is Federico, and Ramon says he can help sell their stolen paintings. Ramon explains that Federico expects certain personal favors in exchange. While they're still talking, the bartender overhears and tells them not to bring that business into his club. The comment angers Ramon. He grabs a bottle from the counter and smashes it over the bartender's head. Federico approaches and invites them to his home. At first, he refuses to deal with stolen goods, but when he sees they will not take no for an answer, he agrees. He leads Ramon into the bedroom. Carlos follows quietly and stands in the doorway, watching. His expression changes, but he says nothing. The next morning, Carlos and Ramon return to the nightclub. The doors are locked, but they force their way inside. In a small back room, they find a bartender and a waiter asleep. Without warning, Carlos draws both pistols and fires, killing them instantly. When Ramon demands to know why, Carlos says he is avenging Ramon for being attacked the night before. Ramon is silent for a moment, then turns and walks quickly out of the building. In the days after the shooting, Federico begins promoting Ramon publicly. He arranges interviews and appearances, getting Ramon's face on television. Ramon enjoys the attention. He talks about leaving crime behind, imagining a different kind of future. After one television interview, he calls his parents. His father answers, but the conversation is brief. The older man says he is ashamed of him. Meanwhile, Carlos's mother meets Ramon's family. She believes Carlos has been working in their store. As they speak, she becomes convinced that Ramon is a bad influence on her son. She warns that their children should not spend time together. Soon after, Carlos and Ramon steal a car. They drive through the city until they encounter a police checkpoint. The officers motion for them to stop. Carlos hands over his fake passport. Ramon pats his pockets and admits he has no identification. Both are ordered to step out of the vehicle. As Carlos moves toward the side of the road, he discreetly tosses his pistols into the grass, avoiding the risk of being caught with them. The officers search them and then escort them to the station. There, Ramon is pressured to give his real name. Carlos asks to speak privately with the police chief. Once inside the office, he places a roll of cash on the desk and offers it in exchange for retrieving Ramon's documents from home. The chief looks at the money, but says it is not enough. He tells Carlos to bring more. Carlos leaves the station and goes to collect everything he has. He stuffs the bills into a bag and drives back toward the station. But when he reaches the building, he stops. He sits there for a moment, then turns the wheel and drives away, leaving Ramon behind. That night, Carlos arrives home. His mother has prepared his favorite meal. He sits at the table and eats as if nothing has happened. His parents exchange glances. They no longer believe he will change. As they eat, Carlos's mother suggests taking a family trip. She says it might help them all spend more time together, but she quickly adds that they don't have enough money to afford it. Carlos stands up without speaking and leaves the room. Moments later, he returns carrying a large bag. He sits on the table and opens it. Inside are stacks of cash, bundled tightly. His father stares at the money. His expression hardens. He tells Carlos to take the money to the police himself. If he refuses, his father says he will do it. That night, his father lies awake in bed. He cannot sleep, his mind still on the stolen money. Finally, he gets up, takes the bag from where it's hidden, and goes out into the yard. There, he digs a hole and buries the cash. In the days that follow, Carlos retrieves his pistols. He keeps them close and begins watching Ramon again. He soon learns that Ramon now spends his time with another man, Miguel, a thief he met in prison. Carlos approaches them and claims that during the police checkpoint incident, the officers have been trying to set him up. Miguel listens, then makes a few comments about Ramon's past with Federico. He even jokes that Federico wanted to take Ramon to Paris. Later, the three of them plan a job together. Late at night, they position their car across a remote road, forcing a truck to stop. Ramon approaches the driver and searches the cab, finding a bag of cash. As he turns back toward their car, the driver reaches under his seat and pulls out a hidden pistol. Carlos reacts immediately. He draws his own gun and fires several times, hitting the driver repeatedly until he falls to the ground. The three men take the money and return to the house. Once there, Ana Maria focuses her attention on Miguel. She tells Carlos to go burn the getaway car so she can be alone with him. Carlos drives the car into a tree, gets out, and pours gasoline over the vehicle. He lights a match and throws it inside. Flames engulf the car, lighting the dark road. Carlos watches for a moment, then turns and walks away. A few days later, Carlos drives Ramon late at night. Ramon is heavily drunk, slouched in the passenger seat with his head against the window. The road ahead is empty. Without warning, Carlos turns the wheel sharply into the oncoming lane. The car crashes violently. The next morning, police arrive at Ana Maria's house. They inform her that Ramon died in the accident. Carlos survived with only a broken arm. With Ramon gone, Miguel needs another partner. He approaches Carlos and asks him to join him on a new job. Their target is a jewelry store. Late at night, they force their way inside. Carlos heads straight for the safe he had seen before. He works quickly, using tools to try to open it. Miguel waits nearby, keeping an eye on the entrance. In the corner of the shop, a security guard is sleeping in a chair. As the sound of the tools grows louder, the guard wakes and begins to stand. Carlos turns, raises his pistol, and shoots the man in the face. The guard collapses instantly. Carlos returns to the safe and continues working until it finally opens. Inside, there's nothing. He stares for a moment, then steps back. Miguel narrows his eyes and accuses Carlos of lying. He says the safe must have had something inside. He starts moving toward Carlos. Without hesitation, Carlos raises his gun again and fires. Miguel ducks behind a metal box. Carlos circles around it, finds a clear angle, and shoots Miguel in the head. After both men are dead, Carlos uses a welding torch inside the store before leaving. The next morning, he goes out to buy cigarettes. At a kiosk, he sees several police officers speaking with his mother. Carlos walks directly toward them. The officers stop him and place him under arrest for arson, robbery, and double murder. Carlos is taken to the police station. Inside, Officers warn him that if he tries to move or resist, they will use a taser on him. Carlos stands still and makes no attempt to fight back. During questioning, he admits to 11 murders and 42 robberies. Word of his confession spreads quickly. Newspapers and radio stations seize on the story, giving him two nicknames: the Angel of Death and the Jackal with a woman's face. Psychologists are brought in to examine it. They try to understand his actions, searching for patterns or explanations. Many place the blame on his parents, saying they failed to control him or set proper boundaries. At home, his mother opens the piano, intending to play. She finds that the keys will not move. When she lifts the lid, she discovers stacks of cash and several pistols hidden inside. Carlos's lawyer visits him in custody. He advises Carlos to claim insanity, arguing that no sane person could commit so many violent acts. Carlos listens but insists he is perfectly normal. Later, while in a hospital room under guard, Carlos suddenly forces a metal spoon down his throat. The object becomes lodged and cannot be removed without surgery. As preparations are made, Carlos is left alone in the operating room for less than a minute. He moves quickly to a nearby window, opens it, and climbs out. Outside, police officers walk the grounds, but none look up. Carlos climbs down into a tree and drops to the ground. Seconds later, alarm sirens begin to sound and shots are fired, but he runs from the area without being hit. He boards a train and travels to Ramon's old house. The building is dark and empty. Carlos slips inside and stays there for the night. The next morning, he calls his mother. He tells her he is fine and asks her to come see him. She urges him to turn himself in and return home. As he waits, Carlos turns on the radio. Music fills the house, and he begins to dance alone in the living room. Outside, soldiers and police surround the property. They move in silently, weapons ready. They enter and arrest him without a struggle. Shortly after his 20th birthday, Carlos is sentenced to life in prison for 11 murders and dozens of other crimes. He remains in prison for decades, becoming the longest-serving inmate in Argentina's history. And that is where the film ends.